It stands alone on the edge of a sprawling metropolis, a silent testament to a civilization that vanished millennia ago. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still in existence, has captivated the human imagination for more than 4,500 years. It is a monument of such impossible scale and precision that its very presence seems to defy the limits of ancient technology, a riddle etched in 2.3 million blocks of stone against the Egyptian sky.
For centuries, its story was one told by outsiders. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing 2,000 years after its completion, painted a grim picture of 100,000 slaves toiling under the lash of a tyrannical pharaoh. This narrative of immense suffering and brute force became the accepted history, a dark shadow cast over the pyramid's sun-scorched stones. It was a story that made sense, for how else could such a feat be accomplished?
But the desert sands are patient. They hold secrets not just within the tombs of kings, but in the humble ground surrounding them. And in recent decades, the sand has begun to give up those secrets, revealing a story far more complex, more ingenious, and more human than we ever dared to imagine. A story that is not just challenging the old theories, but is actively rewriting the history of this monumental achievement. We are in an age of unprecedented discovery, where cutting-edge technology allows us to see through solid rot, and where a single fragile piece of papyrus can give a voice to the very people who built the pyramids. The long-held dogmas of Egyptology are crumbling, replaced by a new understanding forged from hard evidence. The characters in this new story are not the slaves of myth, but skilled artisans, brilliant engineers, and meticulous logisticians. The questions we ask of the pyramid are no longer just how, but who and why in a much deeper sense. We are moving beyond the realm of speculation and into a new chapter of discovery, one that brings us closer than ever before to the minds of its creators. This is the story of the new discoveries at the Great Pyramid, the evidence that is forcing us to rethink everything we thought we knew about this ancient wonder and the civilization that raised it from the dust.
Our journey begins not at the towering peak of the pyramid itself, but in its shadow, in a place once dismissed as little more than rubble and sand. For decades, archaeologists and treasure hunters focused their attention on the royal tombs, the temples, and the magnificent Sphinx. The surrounding area was considered secondary, the unremarkable backstage to the main event. Yet it was here, in this overlooked landscape, that the first crack in the old narrative appeared. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, a team led by renowned Egyptologists Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass began a systematic excavation of an area to the south of the Giza Plateau. They were not searching for gold or hidden chambers, but for something far more elusive: the infrastructure that supported the pyramid's construction. They were looking for the home of the builders. What they found was not a slave camp. There were no signs of bondage, no evidence of a transient, oppressed workforce. Instead, they unearthed the foundations of a highly organized, meticulously planned settlement, a lost city that has since been named Hayt el Garab, or the Wall of the Crow. It was a sprawling complex, a bustling metropolis in its own right, purpose-built to house the thousands of workers who dedicated their lives to the pharaoh's grand project. The layout of the city was astonishingly sophisticated. It was divided into distinct districts, with long galleries that served as barracks for the workers, an administrative center, and industrial areas. The barracks were not crude shelters, but well-constructed buildings capable of housing a rotating workforce estimated to be between 20 and 30,000 people. This was not the architecture of imprisonment. It was the architecture of a state-sponsored, high-priority national project. The most compelling evidence, however, came not from the buildings themselves, but from the refuse pits, the ancient garbage dumps that provided an unvarnished look into the daily lives of the city's inhabitants. archaeologists sifted through millennia of debris and found a treasure trove of animal bones. The analysis of these bones was a bombshell that directly contradicted the Herodotus account of a workforce fed on little more than radishes, onions, and garlic. The sheer quantity of bones was staggering. The data suggested that the inhabitants of this city were consuming vast amounts of meat. Scientific analysis indicated that every single day, the equivalent of over 4,000 pounds of meat from cattle, sheep, and goats was being processed and distributed to feed the population. This was a high-protein diet, the diet of elite, valued workers, not of expendable slaves.
These were not just any cattle either. The patterns of butchery and the age of the animals indicated that prime cuts of beef were being shipped to Giza from rural settlements in the Nile Delta. This was a complex supply chain, a logistical feat that required immense organization and resources, all directed towards ensuring the pyramid builders were well-fed, strong, and healthy. The pharaoh wasn't just building a tomb, he was investing in his workforce. Further evidence of this investment was found in the city's bakeries. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of large, industrial-scale bakeries, complete with massive bread molds and hearths. These facilities were capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread each day, a staple food provided in abundance. Alongside the bakeries, evidence of breweries was also found, suggesting that beer, a nutrient-rich and common part of the ancient Egyptian diet, was also a part of the workers' daily rations. This picture of a well-cared-for workforce was further solidified by the discovery of their tombs. Just to the west of the workers' city, a vast cemetery was unearthed. This was the final resting place of the pyramid builders, and its location was profoundly significant. They were buried with honor in the sacred shadow of the very monuments they had helped create, a privilege that would never have been afforded to slaves. The tombs themselves told a powerful story. They were modest, mud brick structures, often with small, pyramid-shaped tops, mimicking the royal tombs they overlooked. Inside, archaeologists found skeletons, many of whom showed signs of a life of hard physical labor. Vertebral fusions, strained muscles, and healed fractures. But it was the nature of the healing that was most revealing. Many of the skeletons displayed bones that had been broken and then expertly set. There was clear evidence of amputations where the patient had survived the procedure and lived for many years afterward. This pointed to a sophisticated level of medical care. These workers were not worked to death and discarded. When they were injured on the job, they were treated by skilled physicians, cared for, and allowed to heal. Their value was recognized by the state. Inscriptions found within these tombs provided the final definitive proof. The builders proudly proclaimed their titles and roles in the Great Project. They were not nameless chattel. They were the Craftsman Gang, or the Drunkards of Menkaure. They had team names, a sense of camaraderie, and a clear pride in their work. They were Egyptian citizens, conscripted for a period of national service, who came from villages all over the country to participate in a project that was a source of national identity and religious devotion. The discovery of the workers' village and their cemetery did more than just debunk the myth of slave labor. It fundamentally reshaped our understanding of Old Kingdom Egypt. It revealed a society with a level of organizational complexity and logistical capability that was previously unimaginable. The construction of the Great Pyramid was not an act of tyranny, but the result of a nationwide, centrally managed economic and social mobilization. Imagine the Giza Plateau not as a place of suffering, but as a vibrant, bustling hub of activity. The air is thick with the dust of limestone and the smoke from thousands of cooking fires. The rhythmic sound of hammer against chisel is a constant percussion, punctuated by the shouts of foremen and the lowing of cattle being driven to the slaughterhouses. It is a city of purpose, a microcosm of the Egyptian state at the peak of its power. This new understanding, however, raised as many questions as it answered. The sheer scale of the operation was still difficult to comprehend. How did they manage the logistics of moving millions of tons of stone?
How were the teams organized? How did they coordinate the quarrying, the transport, and the final placement of the blocks with such precision? For a long time, the answers remained buried in the realm of theory. Then, in 2013, another discovery was made, hundreds of miles away from Giza, in a desolate spot on the coast of the Red Sea. It was a discovery that would provide a direct, personal link to the age of the pyramids, a voice that would speak to us across a gulf of 45 centuries. It was the oldest piece of writing on papyrus ever found, and it contained the daily logbook of a man who helped build the Great Pyramid. At a remote site called Wadi el-Jarf, a French-Egyptian archaeological team led by Pierre Tallet and Gregory Marward was exploring a series of ancient man-made galleries cut into the rock. They were believed to be part of an ancient harbor complex, but its exact age and purpose were uncertain. Inside one of these galleries, buried under layers of sand and debris, they found a trove of carefully folded papyrus fragments. As the delicate fragments were painstakingly conserved and pieced together, it became clear that the archaeologists had stumbled upon something extraordinary. It was a journal, an administrative logbook kept by a mid-level official named Mirror. The dating was unmistakable. The papyri were from the 27th year of the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, the very pharaoh for whom the Great Pyramid was built. Mir's diary is not a work of literature or poetry. It is a meticulous, day-by-day record of his work, a spreadsheet from 2560 BC. But within its columns of dates, locations, and cargo, it provides the first and only first-hand eyewitness account of the Great Pyramid's construction. It is a document of staggering historical importance, a direct window into the logistical machine that built a wonder of the world. Mirror was the leader of a team, or file, of about 40 elite workmen. His title was inspector, and his job was to oversee the transportation of one of the most crucial materials for the pyramid, the fine white Tura limestone. This high-quality stone was used for the outer casing of the pyramid, giving it a smooth, gleaming white finish that would have shone like a beacon in the desert sun. The diary details Mir's trips back and forth between the Tura quarries located on the eastern bank of the Nile and the Giza plateau. He records how his crew would load the massive limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 3 tons, onto wooden boats. He notes the precise dates of departure and arrival, the number of blocks transported, and the routes they took. One of the most revolutionary revelations from Mir's logbook was his description of the water transport system. He writes about a complex system of man-made canals that had been dredged to bring the boats right to the foot of the Giza plateau. For years, Egyptologists had theorized that the Nile was used to transport the heavy stones, but the river's main channel was miles away from the construction site. Mir's diary confirmed that the ancient engineers had reshaped the landscape to serve their needs. They had constructed an inland harbor, a port right at the base of the pyramid. This discovery, supported by subsequent geological and archaeological work at Giza that has identified the traces of this ancient waterway, solved a major piece of the construction puzzle. The heaviest lifting was done not by men, but by water. His logbook details a highly efficient, well-oiled machine. Mir's crew could complete a round trip, from quarrying the stone at Tura to delivering it at Giza and returning in about 10 days. In a single trip, they could transport up to 200 blocks, a staggering total of several hundred tons of stone. This was not a chaotic, disorganized effort. It was a masterpiece of project management. Mir's diary also provides a human touch. He records the distribution of rations to his crew, confirming the evidence found in the worker city. He mentions reporting to a high-ranking official, Ankaf, who was Khufu's half-brother and vizier, the man believed to be the ultimate architect or overseer of the entire Giza project. This connects a humble inspector directly to the highest levels of the royal court. The discovery of the Diary of Mir was a paradigm shift. It moved the story of the pyramid builders from the realm of archaeological interpretation to that of recorded history. For the first time, we could hear the voice of someone who was there, a man for whom the Great Pyramid was not an ancient mystery, but a daily reality, a job to be done. Together, the worker city and mayor's diary painted a new, vivid picture of the exterior world of the pyramid builders. They were skilled, respected, well-fed citizens participating in a highly organized national project. But the pyramid's greatest secrets have always been hidden inside, within its tons of solid masonry. What lay within its sealed passages and mysterious chambers? For centuries, the internal structure of the Great Pyramid seemed to be known. There was the subterranean chamber, deep in the bedrock below. There was the so-called Queen's Chamber, and above it, the magnificent Grand Gallery, a soaring, corbelled passage leading up to the King's Chamber, the granite-lined room that once held the sarcophagus of Khufu. For a long time, this was believed to be the complete picture, but whispers of hidden chambers have always persisted. Ancient accounts, medieval legends, and modern speculation all hinted that the pyramid had not yet revealed all of its secrets. The problem was how to find them. The structure is so vast and so solid that any form of invasive exploration would be unthinkable. To drill or blast into the pyramid would be an act of archaeological vandalism. What was needed was a way to see through stone. And in the 21st century, that technology finally became a reality. In 2015, an international, multidisciplinary mission was launched called ScanPyramids. It brought together scientists and engineers from Egypt, France, Japan, and Canada with a single goal: to non-invasively scan the Great Pyramids of Giza and Dashur using the most advanced technology available. The team employed a variety of techniques, including infrared thermography to detect temperature variations on the pyramid's surface and 3D laser scanning to create precise models. But their most powerful tool was one that came from the world of particle physics, cosmic ray muography. It is a technique that sounds like science fiction, but its principles are grounded in fundamental physics. Our planet is constantly being bombarded by high-energy particles from outer space, known as cosmic rays. When these particles hit atoms in the upper atmosphere, they create a shower of secondary particles, including subatomic particles called muons. Muons are similar to electrons, but are about 200 times more massive. They rain down on the Earth's surface constantly, and they are highly penetrating. Billions of muons pass through our bodies every minute without us ever noticing. They can pass through hundreds of meters of solid rock. However, as they pass through matter, some of them are absorbed or deflected. The denser the material, the more muons are blocked. By setting up highly sensitive muon detectors, scientists can measure the number of muons coming from different directions. If you place a detector inside or next to a structure like a pyramid, you can create an image of its interior. Areas where more muons get through appear as light spots, indicating a void or a less dense material. Areas where fewer muons get through appear as dark spots, indicating solid, dense stone. In essence, muography is like taking a giant X-ray of the pyramid, using naturally occurring particles from space as the source. The process is incredibly slow and painstaking. The detectors, which look like large, sensitive photographic plates, must be left in place for months at a time to collect enough data to form a clear image. The ScanPyramids team placed their detectors in various locations, including inside the Queen's Chamber and in a corridor just outside the main entrance. For 2 years, the team collected data, patiently waiting for the muons to paint their picture of the pyramid's hidden heart. The scientific world waited with bated breath. In November 2017, they made their announcement, and it was a discovery that stunned the world of Egyptology. They had found something big, something completely unknown. Located directly above the Grand Gallery, the most spectacular internal feature of the pyramid, the scans revealed a massive, previously undetected void. It was the first major internal structural discovery in the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. The void was enormous, with a length of at least 30 meters, or nearly 100 feet, and a cross-section similar to that of the Grand Gallery itself.
The existence of this big void, as it came to be known, was confirmed by 3 separate teams of physicists from 3 different institutions using 3 different types of muon detection technology. This gave the discovery an extraordinary level of scientific certainty. There was no doubt that a huge, empty space existed in a part of the pyramid that was previously thought to be solid masonry.
The announcement ignited a firestorm of debate and speculation. What was this void? Was it a hidden chamber, a secret burial room for Khufu that had remained untouched for 4,500 years? Was it a collection of smaller rooms? Or was it something else entirely, something related to the pyramid's construction? Egyptologists and engineers immediately began to formulate theories. One of the leading hypotheses is that the void served a structural purpose. The Grand Gallery, with its massive corbelled vault, puts an immense amount of pressure on the chambers below it. It's possible that the ancient architects intentionally built this large void above it to act as a relieving chamber, reducing the weight and preventing the collapse of the gallery ceiling. This theory is supported by the existence of 5 known relieving chambers built above the king's chamber. These are small, rough-hewn spaces stacked one on top of the other that were clearly not designed to be entered or used for any ritual purpose. Their sole function was to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid's core masonry away from the flat roof of the king's chamber. The big void could be a similar, much larger-scale version of this engineering principle. Another theory suggests that the void may have been an internal ramp used during the pyramid's construction. Some Egyptologists, like the architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, have long proposed that the pyramid was built from the inside out using a spiraling internal ramp to haul the blocks upwards. The big void's location and slope are roughly consistent with where such a ramp might have been used to get blocks to the upper levels of the structure. Of course, the most tantalizing possibility is that the void is a hidden chamber or a series of chambers containing artifacts or even another royal burial. While most Egyptologists believe Khufu was interred in the king's chamber, the fact that his sarcophagus was found empty has always fueled speculation. Could the big void lead to the true, undisturbed tomb of the pharaoh? As of now, the contents and purpose of the big void remain a complete mystery. The ScanPyramids project was designed to detect, not to explore. The next great challenge is to find a way to investigate this space without damaging the pyramid. Researchers are exploring the possibility of drilling a tiny hole and sending in a robotic, snake-like camera to see what lies inside. Until then, the void remains a tantalizing secret, a vast question mark hanging in the heart of the Great Pyramid. But the ScanPyramids team was not finished. Their continued analysis of the muon data, combined with other scanning techniques, pointed to another anomaly, this one located much lower down, near the pyramid's original entrance on its northern face. For years, there had been a feature on the outside of the pyramid, a set of large gabled stones known as chevrons, located just above the descending passage that tourists use today. These chevrons were long thought to be a purely decorative feature, or perhaps a way to mark the entrance. But the scans suggested something was behind them. In March 2023, after years of meticulous data collection and analysis, the team made another stunning announcement. They had confirmed the existence of a hidden corridor directly behind these chevrons. This time, they were able to get a closer look. Working with the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, they managed to feed a tiny 6-millimeter wide endoscope through a small gap between the stones of the chevrons. The camera pushed through into the darkness, and for the first time in 4,500 years, human eyes looked inside the hidden passage. The images revealed a corridor with a gabled or pitched ceiling, matching the chevrons on the outside. It was about 9 meters, or 30 feet, long and about 2.1 meters, or 7 feet wide. The corridor was empty and appeared to be roughly finished. At its far end, it was blocked by two large vertical limestone slabs. Once again, the discovery opened up a new round of debate. What was the purpose of this north-face corridor? Like the Big Void, one of the most plausible explanations is structural. The gabled ceiling is a very effective way to redirect weight. The corridor may have been designed to distribute the immense load of the pyramid's core masonry away from a sensitive point below it. What could be below it? One possibility is the main descending passage, which starts just a few meters underneath the newly discovered corridor. The corridor might have been a relieving chamber to protect this passage from collapse. Another, more exciting possibility is that it was built to protect something we haven't found yet. Perhaps the true original entrance to the pyramid, which has never been definitively located. The current tourist entrance was created in the 9th century by the Caliph al-Ma'mun, who had his men tunnel into the pyramid in search of treasure. The original sealed entrance is believed to be somewhere nearby, and this hidden corridor might have been a key part of its structural protection. The two slabs blocking the end of the corridor are another mystery. What lies behind them? Is it just more solid masonry, or is it another passage, another chamber, another secret waiting to be uncovered? These discoveries by the ScanPyramids project are revolutionary. They have proven that the Great Pyramid is more complex than its external simplicity suggests. It is not just a solid pile of stones with a few known passages. It is an intricate, sophisticated piece of architecture with hidden features and engineering solutions that we are only just beginning to understand. It is a structure that still has the capacity to surprise us. The existence of these hidden voids forces us to re-examine one of the most fundamental questions about the pyramids. How were they actually built? The new evidence of internal complexity lends weight to theories that have long been considered fringe or unorthodox. The traditional image of thousands of men dragging blocks up enormous external ramps is being seriously challenged. The ramp theory has been dominant for decades, but it has always had significant problems. To reach the height of the Great Pyramid, a single straight ramp would have needed to be over a mile long, requiring a volume of material almost as great as the pyramid itself. A spiraling ramp wrapping around the outside of the pyramid would have obscured the sight lines needed for the structure's incredible geometric precision. This is where the idea of an internal ramp, as championed by Jean-Pierre Houdin, gains new traction. Houdin proposed that after the first third of the pyramid was built using a short external ramp, the builders switched to an internal ramp that corkscrewed up through the body of the pyramid, just inside its outer face. This would have been far more efficient and would have allowed the surveyors to maintain their precise measurements as the structure grew. While direct proof of such a ramp is still missing, the discovery of the Big Void offers tantalizing, if circumstantial, support. A feature of Houdin's model is that the corners of the internal ramp would have needed to be left open to allow the teams to turn the massive blocks. These open corner notches would have later been filled in. The ScanPyramids project did, in fact, detect lower density anomalies at the corners of the pyramid in locations consistent with this theory. Furthermore, the Big Void, located above the Grand Gallery, could have been part of a related but separate system. Houdin and others have proposed that the Grand Gallery itself was not just a ceremonial passage, but a key part of a construction machine. It may have housed a system of counterweights and trolleys used to haul the massive granite beams, some weighing up to 70 tons, that form the ceiling of the King's Chamber. The Big Void, in this scenario, could have been a passage used to get the counterweight system into place, or a channel for the ropes and pulleys. It suggests a level of mechanical sophistication, of complex machinery integrated into the very fabric of the building. That goes far beyond the simple model of brute force. The pyramid was not just built, it was engineered. This re-evaluation of engineering prowess is not limited to Giza. At other sites, even more radical theories are emerging. At the Saqqara Plateau, home to the Step Pyramid of Djoser, the very first of the Great Stone Pyramids, French researchers have proposed a truly revolutionary hypothesis involving a hidden hydraulic system. This theory suggests that the Egyptians may have used water to do the heavy lifting. The idea is that a central well or shaft within the pyramid was connected to a surrounding moat via a series of channels and locks. By flooding the system, water pressure could have been used to raise a float or barge, lifting the massive stone blocks, some weighing several tons, up through the internal shaft, much like a modern hydraulic elevator. While this hypothesis is still highly speculative, there is some intriguing evidence to support it. Geological surveys have revealed the presence of what could be an ancient moat around the pyramid complex. There are also numerous shafts and channels within the substructure of the Step Pyramid whose purpose has never been fully understood. The theory, if proven, would demonstrate a mastery of hydraulic engineering far in advance of what was thought possible for the period. It challenges us to look at the pyramids not as static monuments, but as dynamic construction sites where the builders employed a deep and practical understanding of physics, mechanics, and engineering. They were not just piling stones, they were solving complex problems with innovative and efficient solutions. They were, in the truest sense of the word, scientists and engineers. This wave of new discoveries is also expanding our understanding of the pyramid phenomenon itself, beyond the famous Giza Plateau. For a long time, pyramids were seen as the exclusive domain of the pharaohs and the absolute elite of Egyptian society. They were the ultimate symbols of royal power and the king's journey to the afterlife. But recent finds are suggesting a more nuanced picture. In modern-day Sudan, a region that was once ancient Nubia, archaeologists have been excavating a burial site called Tumbas. During a period around 1500 BC, this area was under Egyptian control, and the local Nubian culture adopted many Egyptian customs, including their burial practices. At Tumbas, they built small, steep-sided pyramids for their dead. An analysis of the skeletal remains found within one of these pyramids, published in the Journal of Anthropological Archaeology, yielded a surprising result. The tomb did not contain a single elite individual, but a mix of people from different social strata. The bones of some individuals showed the telltale signs of a life of hard physical labor, while others did not. This suggests that the honor of a pyramid burial, at least in this Egyptianized Nubian community, was not restricted to the wealthy and powerful. Lower status workers, perhaps the very people who helped build the tomb, were also granted the privilege of being buried within it. It hints at a society where the lines between the elite and the common people were perhaps more blurred than in the heartland of Egypt itself. This finding challenges the monolithic view of the pyramid as a symbol of oppressive top-down power. It suggests that the pyramid form, as a concept, could be adapted and democratized, becoming a shared symbol of passage to the afterlife for a wider community. It adds another layer of complexity to the social and religious meaning of these iconic structures. From the personal diary of a boat captain to the ghostly image of a void captured by cosmic rays, from the bones of a well-fed worker to the tomb of a Nubian commoner, the pieces of a new puzzle are coming together. Each discovery, each piece of data is adding a stroke to a new portrait of ancient Egypt, one that is more detailed, more dynamic, and more human than the one it replaces. We are learning that the builders of the pyramids were not an anonymous, oppressed mass, but skilled and valued members of a complex society. They were well-fed, they received medical care, and they were buried with honor. They were led by meticulous managers like Merer, who oversaw a logistical operation of breathtaking scale and efficiency. We are learning that the pyramids themselves are not just simple piles of stone, but marvels of engineering filled with sophisticated features designed to solve immense structural challenges. The architects who designed them were masters of physics and mechanics who may have employed principles of leverage, counterweights, and perhaps even hydraulics to achieve their goals. And we are learning that the story of the pyramids is not confined to Giza, but is part of a wider cultural tapestry that spread across the ancient world, adapted and reinterpreted by different peoples. The pyramid was not just a tomb, but a powerful idea, a symbol of eternity that resonated far beyond the borders of Egypt. This is a history that is being rewritten not by speculation or fringe theories, but by science. It is the result of decades of patient, methodical work by archaeologists, physicists, engineers, and historians. They have dug in the sand, analyzed ancient texts, and peered through stone with invisible rays to strip away the myths and reveal the truth that lies beneath. But the story is far from over. The Big Void and the North Face Corridor are still mysteries waiting to be solved. The internal ramp theory is still a hypothesis waiting for definitive proof. The full implications of Mir's diary are still being analyzed. And there are countless sites across Egypt that have yet to be fully excavated. As our technology continues to advance, we will undoubtedly develop new ways to probe these ancient structures. We may one day be able to map the entire interior of the Great Pyramid with pinpoint accuracy, revealing every hidden passage and chamber. We may find more papyri, more tombs of the builders, more pieces of the puzzle that will bring the world of 4,500 years ago into even sharper focus. The Great Pyramid, which once seemed to be a monument to a distant and unknowable past, has become a dynamic field of active discovery. It is not a closed book, but a story that is still being written. The silence of the stones is finally being broken, and they are speaking to us, telling us a new and profound story about the dawn of human civilization and the enduring power of human ingenuity. Let us return for a moment to the lost city of Hayt el Ghurab, the city of the builders. Imagine the scene not just as an archaeological site, but as a living place. The sun is setting over the Giza plateau, casting the shadow of the rising pyramid over the bustling streets. Thousands of men are returning from their shifts, their bodies tired, but their spirits high. They are part of something immense, something that will outlast them all. They gather in the communal halls, sharing bread and beer, their conversations a mix of dialects from all corners of the kingdom. They are masons, quarrymen, surveyors, and boat crews. They are doctors, scribes, bakers, and priests. They are a society in miniature, a cross-section of the Egyptian nation, brought together for a singular purpose. They look up at the colossal structure they are creating, its white limestone casing catching the last rays of the sun. It is more than just a tomb for their king. It is a symbol of their collective power, their shared faith, and their national pride. It is a stairway to the heavens, a machine for eternity, and they are its creators. This, the evidence now tells us, is the true legacy of the pyramid builders. For centuries, we have stood before the Great Pyramid and asked, how could they have done this? We looked for an answer in the supernatural, in lost technologies, or in the cruelty of tyrants. But the real answer was always there, hidden in the sand. They did it with brilliant organization, with profound engineering skill, and with the dedicated labor of a proud and respected workforce. They did it not as slaves, but as masters of their world. And that is a story far more wondrous than any of the myths it replaced. The scientific exploration of the pyramid's interior represents a profound shift in the field of archaeology. It marks a move away from the spade and the brush as the sole tools of discovery and into an era where physics and data science play a central role. The muography experiment was not just a search for hidden rooms. It was a proof of concept for a new way of doing archaeology. Consider the challenge facing the ScanPyramids team. The Great Pyramid has a mass of nearly 6 million tons. It is a mountain of solid rock, and any signal passing through it is heavily attenuated. The muon flux at sea level is already low, and to detect a statistically significant variation after it has passed through 100 meters of limestone requires detectors of incredible sensitivity and an enormous amount of patience. The data does not arrive as a clear picture. It comes as a stream of hits, millions upon millions of individual muon detections that must be meticulously logged, timestamped, and analyzed. Sophisticated algorithms are required to reconstruct the trajectory of each muon and to build up a 3D density map of the structure. It is a process that lies at the intersection of nuclear physics, computer science, and historical inquiry. When the first hints of the big void began to appear in the data, the team was rightly cautious. An anomaly in a data set of this complexity could easily be a statistical fluke, an error in the detectors, or a misinterpretation of the results. This is why the confirmation by 3 independent teams was so crucial. Each team used a different muon detection technology. One used nuclear emulsion films, another used scintillator hotoscopes, and a third used gas-filled detectors. When all 3, working blindly from each other, pointed to the same spot in the pyramid, the discovery moved from possibility to certainty. This rigorous, peer-reviewed approach is the hallmark of modern science, and its application to a 4,500-year-old monument is changing the rules of the game. It allows for a new kind of virtual excavation, one that respects the integrity of the structure while revealing its deepest secrets. It is a conversation between the most ancient of architectures and the most modern of technologies. The discovery of the North Face Corridor showcases another aspect of this new approach, the synergy between different technologies. While muography first hinted at the corridor's existence, it was infrared thermography that provided supporting evidence. Thermographic scans of the pyramid's face showed a subtle temperature anomaly in the area of the chevrons, suggesting a different thermal behavior than the surrounding solid stone, a clue that there might be an empty space behind it. It was this combination of data that gave the team the confidence to seek permission for the final step, the endoscopic investigation. That tiny camera, snaking its way through a joint in the ancient masonry, represents a new form of minimally invasive exploration. It is the modern equivalent of Howard Carter peering through a small hole into Tutankhamun's tomb, but with a level of precision and care that was previously impossible. These new tools are not just finding new things, they are forcing us to look at old things in a new light. Let's reconsider the Grand Gallery. For centuries, it has been admired as an architectural masterpiece, a breathtaking example of a corbelled vault. But its function has always been debated. Why build such a large, complex, and steep passage simply to lead to the king's chamber? The walls of the Grand Gallery are lined with a series of ramps or benches, into which are cut 27 pairs of slots. The purpose of these slots has been a long-standing puzzle. The discovery of the big void directly above the gallery adds a new variable to the equation. If the gallery was part of a machine, a counterweight system for lifting the granite beams, then these slots may have been anchor points for the wooden machinery, the beams and levers of this ancient crane. In this light, the Grand Gallery is transformed from a static, ceremonial space into the fossilized remains of a dynamic, functional machine. Its great height would have been necessary to accommodate the vertical movement of the massive counterweights. The entire structure becomes an elegant piece of integrated engineering, where the final form of the passages was dictated by the needs of the construction process. This perspective shift is crucial. It encourages us to view the pyramid's architects not as mystics obsessed only with symbolism, but as pragmatic problem solvers. They faced the monumental challenge of lifting 70-ton granite blocks to a height of over 60 meters. How would a brilliant engineer with the resources of an entire kingdom at their disposal solve that problem? The answer may be written in the very architecture of the Grand Gallery and the newly discovered void above it. The implications of this extend to the pyramid's exterior as well. The incredible precision of the Great Pyramid is one of its most baffling features. Its base is level to within a few centimeters, and its sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of a few arc minutes. How was this achieved while the structure was constantly growing, with its sightlines being altered by the addition of new layers of stone? The internal ramp theory provides a compelling answer. By keeping the ramp inside the structure, the four outer faces would have remained clear and accessible to the surveyors throughout the construction process. They could have continuously checked their alignments and angles from the ground, ensuring that the final geometric form was perfect. The ramp, a tool of construction, would have been sacrificed in the name of the final perfect form. This new engineering-focused understanding of the pyramids does not diminish their majesty, it enhances it. It replaces a vague sense of wonder with a deep and specific appreciation for the genius of its creators. The magic of the pyramid is not supernatural. It is the magic of human intellect, organization, and ambition. Let us delve deeper into the life of Merer, the man whose diary opened such a clear window into this world. His logbook is more than just a list of deliveries. It's a record of a life lived in the service of a grand project. He mentions sailing through a region called Roche Khufu, or the Pool of Khufu. This was the name given to the artificial harbor at Giza, a bustling port teeming with boats arriving from all over Egypt. Some boats, like Merer's, brought the fine white limestone from Tura for the casing. Others brought the red granite for the internal chambers all the way from Aswan, a journey of more than 500 miles up the Nile. Still others brought food for the workers, grain from the fertile fields, fish from the river, and cattle from the delta pastures. And then there were the boats carrying the workers themselves, rotating in and out of their periods of service. The port of Khufu would have been the logistical heart of the entire operation, a place of constant motion and controlled chaos. Merer's diary gives us a glimpse of the bureaucracy that managed this flow. He reports to Ankaf, the vizier, a man whose own tomb is one of the largest mastabas in the Eastern Cemetery at Giza. This shows a clear chain of command, from the pharaoh down to the vizier, and from the vizier down to the inspectors like Merer, who were the on-the-ground managers. Merer's work was not easy. He and his crew of 40 men were elite specialists. Their job required expert knowledge of sailing on the Nile, navigating its currents and seasonal changes. It required an understanding of quarrying, of how to handle and load multi-ton blocks of stone without damaging them. And it required a disciplined adherence to a tight schedule, as the entire construction project depended on a steady supply of materials. The diary even hints at the seasonal rhythm of the work. The transportation of the heaviest stones was likely concentrated during the annual Nile flood, which occurred from July to October. During this time, the water level was at its highest, allowing the boats to sail over the flooded plains and get much closer to the quarries and the construction site. The man-made canals described by Merer would have been designed to manage and extend this period of high water, maximizing the efficiency of the transport system. This again underscores the deep connection between the pyramid builders and their natural environment. They did not just fight against the constraints of nature, they harnessed its power. They understood the rhythms of the river, the properties of different types of stone, and the principles of mechanics. Their success was a result of this deep, practical knowledge passed down through generations of craftsmen and engineers. The discovery of the diary at Wadi al-Jarf is also significant for what it tells us about the reach of Khufu's administration. This Red Sea port was not directly involved in the pyramid's construction, but it was part of the same state-sponsored system. The port was used to launch expeditions across the sea to the Sinai Peninsula, where the Egyptians mined for copper and turquoise, essential materials for making tools and decorative items. The fact that an administrative logbook from the Giza project was found here suggests a highly interconnected and mobile bureaucracy. Officials and skilled crews like Merer's may have been moved from one state project to another as needed. One season they might be hauling limestone for the pyramid, the next they might be supporting a mining expedition on the Red Sea. This paints a picture of a flexible and dynamic workforce at the disposal of a powerful and highly organized central state. This level of organization is the true secret of the pyramids. It is a secret that has been hiding in plain sight. The pyramid itself is the ultimate proof of this organizational power. A structure made of 2.3 million blocks cannot be built by a disorganized mob. Every block had to be quarried, shaped, transported, and put in its precise place. This required planning, coordination, and a shared sense of purpose on an almost unimaginable scale. The workers' city at Hayt el Ghurab provides the archaeological proof of this social organization. The city was not an accidental slum that grew up around a construction site. It was a planned urban center. Its gridded streets and standardized barracks speak of a central authority imposing order. The presence of administrative buildings, sealed with the symbols of different work gangs, shows a system of accounting and oversight. Let's explore the medical evidence in more detail. The skeletal remains from the workers' cemetery have been studied by bioarchaeologists, who can read the story of a person's life from their bones. They found that the workers had a high incidence of trauma, particularly to the back and limbs, which is consistent with the heavy labor of moving stone. But they also found that these injuries were often treated effectively.
One famous example is a man whose leg had to be amputated below the knee. The bone shows signs of healing and remodeling, indicating that he survived the surgery and lived for many years afterward. Such a procedure would have required not only surgical skill to perform the amputation, but also knowledge of how to prevent infection and provide post-operative care. This was not primitive first aid, it was organized medicine.
Other skeletons show skulls that were fractured and subsequently healed. There is even evidence of brain surgery. These injured workers were not a liability to be discarded. They were a valuable resource to be preserved. Perhaps after their injuries, they were given lighter duties, such as making tools or weaving ropes. Their experience and skills were too valuable to lose. This evidence of a social safety net, of a system that cared for its workers, is one of the most profound revelations from the Giza Plateau. It speaks to a society that understood the importance of its human capital. The pharaoh's power was not just absolute, it was also, in a way, paternalistic. The state provided for the workers, and in return, the workers gave their labor to the state's grand projects. This new, more nuanced view of Old Kingdom society helps to explain the sheer duration and stability of the pyramid building age. The construction of the Giza pyramids was not a singular event, but the culmination of a century of development and experience. It began with Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara and evolved through the experiments of pharaohs like Sneferu, Khufu's father, who built 3 major pyramids, including the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid at Dashur. Each of these projects was a massive undertaking that required decades of sustained effort. Such stability would have been impossible in a society based purely on brutal oppression. Slave-based economies are often brittle and prone to rebellion. The Egyptian model, based on a rotating system of national service or corvée labor, where citizens worked on state projects for a portion of the year, was far more sustainable. For the average Egyptian farmer, this period of service may have taken place during the inundation season, when their fields were flooded and agricultural work was impossible. It was a way for the state to mobilize a massive labor force during a period of seasonal unemployment. For these workers, it was both a civic duty and a religious act, a way to serve their god-king and ensure the cosmic order, or Mat. This brings us to the ultimate question: why? Why did the ancient Egyptians invest such an incredible amount of resources and human effort into building these monuments? The traditional answer is that they were simply tombs, elaborate houses for the dead king's journey into the afterlife. But the new discoveries suggest that their purpose may have been broader and more complex. The pyramid was not just a tomb, it was an economic engine. The construction project stimulated the entire Egyptian economy. It required the development of new quarrying and transport technologies.
It created a massive demand for food, timber, pottery, and textiles, supporting a vast network of farmers and artisans across the country. It was, in modern terms, a massive state infrastructure project that unified the nation and centralized economic power in the hands of the pharaoh. The pyramid was also a powerful political statement. In a world without mass media, the Giza pyramids were an unparalleled instrument of state propaganda. Their sheer size and perfection broadcast a clear message to anyone who saw them. The king who could command such a project was no mere mortal. He was a being of immense power, a god on earth, whose authority was absolute and unquestionable. The pyramids helped to solidify the ideology of divine kingship that was the foundation of the Egyptian state.
And finally, the pyramid was a national unifying project. The workers who came from different villages and regions to build it would have returned home with a new sense of a shared Egyptian identity. They had participated in something greater than themselves, a project that transcended their local communities. The pyramid helped to forge the very idea of Egypt as a unified nation-state.
So, when we look at the Great Pyramid today, we should see more than just a tomb. We should see a testament to a sophisticated and highly organized society. We should see a masterpiece of engineering and project management. And we should see the product of the collective effort of a nation, a monument built not by the lash of the whip, but by the power of a shared vision.
The journey of discovery is ongoing. The secrets of the Big Void and the North Face Corridor are still waiting to be fully revealed. The sands of Egypt undoubtedly hold more texts like Mira's diary, more workers' tombs, more clues that will add further detail to this emerging picture. The story of the pyramids is not set in stone. It is constantly evolving, as each new discovery forces us to refine our understanding and to ask new, more insightful questions.
We are living in a golden age of Egyptology, where science and archaeology are working hand in hand to solve the oldest of mysteries. The Great Pyramid, which stood for so long as a symbol of the unknowable past, is slowly but surely giving up its secrets. And in doing so, it is teaching us a profound lesson about our own history and about the incredible things that human beings can achieve when they work together with purpose, ingenuity, and a shared belief in creating something that will last for eternity.